seen it happen too. Like we have a lot of people that come from a background of creative writing or a background of writing like poetry or short stories. So they kind of put that kind of stuff into their writing. And so it's hard to get from, because I had it too in high school. I took creative writing classes and stuff. But if you take the news writing or if you take this class, it shows you like, you know, some more steps on how to write news. So we have people that kind of exaggerate it sometimes, but
I read a story last night. It was after the Oscars, and you know Jared Leto, right? That guy Jared Leto. The headline said Jared Leto admits to having a girlfriend or something on the red carpet. So everyone's like, okay, everyone's gonna click on it, you know. And so I clicked on it and I started reading it. And after the first two paragraphs, I read that he grabbed like a little 80-year-old lady and was like, "This is my girlfriend." So immediately I got upset. I'm like, "Why am I reading this story? It's obviously not really his girlfriend." So immediately that website's credibility and that writer's credibility were gone. I don't trust them anymore. I don't care what they have to say because they're just gonna mess with me. You know, I wasted 25 seconds of my life. I could have been watching Duck Dynasty. You know, like reading the story. And I mean, so as soon as somebody exaggerates something, as soon as someone, you know, wraps a present and you open it and it's not what you expected or it's not even a present to begin with, you know, I mean, you're not going to trust them anymore. And as journalists, you can't, it's the same thing. You can't do that. You can't, you know, promise someone the world and then, you know, give them a donut. And then, you know, expect them to be happy about it. And I know I'm not. So you have to try to stay as close to, I guess, the truth as possible without getting people too excited.
I think a solution to that was a lot of times I would find stories, and that's one of the things that's really difficult about being a student journalist. Things are going to happen around on campus that, you know, you're a part of this community, you're a student here, so there are things that you're passionate about that you can't necessarily write about because you're so passionate about it, or that's one of the skills that you learn pretty quickly, that you have to learn pretty quickly, because when you write, you know, you're taught to be passionate about whatever it is that you're writing about, but those value words are what separate news from opinion. And so what a solution that I found was that if I ever had a story where I felt, you know, either, oh, this is horrible, this is the worst thing that's ever happened here, or, oh, you know, like, this is the best thing, I would separate the facts and write my news story, but then I would maybe turn an opinion piece about it. And I think that's something that only certain writers can do, because you know, if someone reads your byline on both of those stories, you're gonna think, okay, well then this person is sold on this side as far as their opinion is concerned, so I can't really trust them as far as the news is concerned. So it's always a matter of balance, and like I said, it's something that was brought up in the video as far as one of the writers that she was talking about how all the, what was it, sexual assault was happening on campus. She was a women's studies major, so that was something that she was very passionate about, and that she didn't agree as far as how her newspaper was handling it. So that was a really valid point that I felt was brought up, because I know that I probably shouldn't have, but I wrote a lot of stories about things that were happening in my classes. Like, I would go to the events, or I was a part of whatever field trips were going on, and I would report on them. But I was also kind of participating in them. So, like I said, it's a very careful balance that writers need to have, and it's a very valuable skill that you need to have to be able to sort of turn off your emotions and say, okay, this is fact, this is fact, this is fact, and then kind of turn around and be able to be like, all right, now I'm just gonna let it all loose and put it out on the opinion page.
If you want to watch editorializing, or that's what we call it, if you like, you know, you fluff up a story too much and you add all these, you know, glossy, shiny words, it's editorializing. If you want to watch that happen, watch the movie Shattered Glass. It's about this reporter who writes for, I think it's a magazine. And, okay, hey, some people have seen it. So, it was really good, and I was surprised I watched it in my English class. But he just makes up entire events. He makes up people, he makes up email accounts, he makes up phone numbers. It's insane. You guys should all watch that movie. Because as a reporter, like, no one in my class knew that I was in the paper, I don't think. That was like my second semester on staff or something. But me personally watching it, I was like so into it. I was like, what? How? I was like kind of mad that he got away with it, because that would never, like, if we try, not that I want to, but if we ever try doing that, like making up an entire event and making up like people's names and making up phone numbers and like contact information. I don't know what like Mr. Cameron or an editor would do if he ever tried doing that, because it's just insane, and I don't know how he got away with it. But I mean, he didn't get away with it. He could, like, I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, go watch the movie because it'll tell you. It's interesting.
Yeah, so have you ever been gung-ho about writing a story but then had like writer's remorse on whether you should or shouldn't have looked at?
Well, one thing you want to do before you write is you want to make sure that when you're covering an event that you're not, involved, like you're not emotionally involved in it. Like you don't want to go, if you're a huge Cerritos College baseball fan, you don't want to be covering the baseball game and being like, oh, and they lost like devastatingly, like it was just so bad. You don't want to put any of that, because when your copy editor goes through it, when your section editor goes through it, they're going to be reading all this stuff and they're going to be like, okay, you're putting too much of your opinion into it, and we don't want your opinion. We want what happened, and we want somebody who's going to pick up the paper and read it to be like, oh, they lost, and give their opinion, have their own opinion on it. They don't want your opinion, because if you say they lost so bad, it was so tragic, then they're gonna be like, oh, well, I don't care. So why are you telling me that you're so sad about this? That you save that for your opinions. You don't want to put any of your emotions into any of your writing other than your opinion writing, because otherwise you're giving your opinion rather than stating what actually happened.
It's really difficult too. The paper I work at now, and this happens. It's gonna be related to the college paper, but we have a crime reporter, and on a daily basis, she sees people who are dead. Sees families crying. I mean, it's day after day after day for her, and she you have to kind of develop a skin, and you kind of have to not, I hate to say this, but not really care as much about the people who are being involved in the situation, more than you care about telling the story and make sure the story is correct. So yeah, you do develop a tougher skin, and you don't ever really, I guess, regret writing a story when you're just kind of telling the facts.
A few semesters ago, we had a car catch on fire in the parking lot, and the girl was just devastated. If your car caught on fire, come on. She was devastated. She was crying, and I was trying to interview her, but she wanted nothing to do with me. So that one was tough. And then I felt bad for her, but at the same time, I was like, oh, this is an interesting little story to put on the front page, and it went on the front page of the paper. But she eventually talked to us, but at first she was like mad at us that we were there, but it happened on campus. So sometimes that happens.
The first story I ever covered, it was after two soccer players got into a car accident on the way to Oklahoma. They were going to college. They had just transferred, and they got into a car accident, and they both died. And they had a memorial at the soccer field at the soccer game. My first day of covering a story, they asked me to go cover that story. I had to go talk to the little brothers of the two guys that died, and that was probably the hardest thing I've ever done. I wanted to hug them after I talked to them. They were so cute. They were like 8 or 9 years old, and me and the other girl, we were both new on staff, and we almost cried. We were like, I want to hug you and tell you I'm sorry for your loss, but we had to be reporters, so we couldn't. We had to interview them and try to hold it together because it was really sad. And then we interviewed the parents too, and the parents were sobbing, and we also interviewed some of the other family and friends that were there, and some of the players as well. And it was really hard, but you have to keep it together. You have to, you can't let your emotions get in the way of covering what's going on, because if you do, you might twist the story around to where it does sound like you're putting your opinion in there, and you don't want to add too much emotion to it. You want the reader to feel what you're saying without putting in your opinion. So by just telling the facts, people read the story and they could feel what was going on by just explaining what happened without us adding in our opinion.
It's not her job to tell you it's a sad story. I mean, it's just a sad story. And if she tells the story, the way it happened, then the whole feeling of sad is going to resonate. through everybody, whoever reads that story.
I think as far as writer's remorse is concerned, the only stories that you regret are the ones that you don't write. And a very big lesson that we learned probably in the first week is that if it makes you uncomfortable, you should be going out there and following that story. So I think the one time that I really regretted not writing a story was when a student died. He was a track star. And I never got that experience of going out and really experiencing that grief from people, because these newspapers, they're, like I said, they're a service to the community. You're not just getting the news out to the general public, but you're helping someone tell their side of the story, whatever it is that happened, whether it was something great or something very tragic. And you're gonna find that when the more difficult it is to go out and face a story, the more rewarding it is. The more you're gonna learn about not just your community, but about yourself. You're either gonna see yourself in the people that you interview, or you're going to maybe learn something about yourself. Maybe I didn't like, the way that I felt when this happened, but it makes you more humble. So that's a pretty big step as a writer, I think, because that humility kind of helps you be more objective. You learn to really take into consideration someone else's feelings and respect that, because as, there was a part of the movie where you saw like a poster, like they had different things up on their walls, and it was production night, and one of the posters that they had up was, "If it bleeds, it leads." So you're kind of programmed to find scandal, to find something really tragic to write about. And one of the difficult parts is that when you're recognized, you start to get recognized on campus as a reporter, you go out and you find these stories, and people think, oh, well, they're just hungry for a story. They don't really care about how I feel. They don't care about what I'm saying. They don't, your credibility goes out the window. So when people see you as someone who's just after a story, they're not gonna open up to you as much. And that's hard to take as a person, because you do realize, well, I kind of am after a story, but I need to, kind of find that middle ground so that people respect me enough and are able to kind of open up to me. Because ultimately, that's what you want to do. You want to be able to report on what it is that someone's going through. Yes?
So in the movie, they had like a really hard time balancing being a student and working for the paper. Do you guys ever have that problem?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Every day.
Like missing classes and everything?
Yes, that was a very big part that was going on. They said that they missed class probably like 3 times, and they were completely stressed out, and especially with production nights coming up. I mean, a lot of us, when I was there, I could say for myself, I failed probably about 2 classes each semester, and ultimately, that's one of the reasons that I left. I was like, I can't keep doing this, because there's a life outside of Talon Marks that I need to, get to, and you have to decide what is right for yourself. At the end of the day, you have to be able to go home and say, am I okay with whatever it is that I did today? And a lot of times I wasn't, because, I missed so much class that I was failing, and I thought, what am I gonna do? Like, I can't stay in the newspaper forever, and I don't even know if journalism is for me, so you give up a lot, and you also gain a lot. It's always, you're always on that brink of falling apart. That's how I felt a lot of times.
Both Mr. Cameron and Alicia stress to the staff is you need to attend your other classes. He tells the students that every semester, and Alicia will call you out and tell you, you need to go to class, you have class right now. Because a lot of times we're just so focused on what we're doing, we're trying to get out a paper, we're trying to put stuff online. We're just so into what we're doing because we love it. We don't pay attention to our other classes. I actually took mass comm in the summer, last summer, and I was the editor-in-chief for the following semester, and something happened where there was a bunch of cops in the parking lot, and nobody was out there to cover it. So, and it was the summer, I wasn't even in the class yet, but I left mass comm, class, and I ran outside and I went to go cover it. I ended up not getting credit for the day for missing class. I came back later, but I had a story, and I got it done, and I got pictures, and I was tweeting, and I was doing what I needed to do, and you know, I ended up missing class. I failed my math class. I actually am taking it over now to make up for when I failed when I was, I think, news editor. Because yeah, I love journalism, I love what I'm doing, and I don't want to leave, even though I know I need to leave, but so it's really hard. And I had a job last semester, I'm still working there, but I had a job, and I was editor-in-chief, so I had to balance work and school and the paper, and it was just crazy.
And it doesn't start or end at school either. Growing up, I was really close to my older sister. As I got older, we kind of strayed away. I remember when I was editor, she invited me she kind of broke the ice and invited me to a concert. And I was like, okay, sweet, I want to go to the concert with my sister. So I said yes. Of course, the schedule came out a month later, and I had production night that night. So how do you tell your sister that you can't make it to the concert after you told her that you could, you know, because you have to be at school at 8:30 at night? So I mean, it affects your personal life. It affects your school, relationships. Half the people I work with now are single, you know, because we work till 11:30 on Friday, Saturday night. You know, I mean, who wants to go out on Wednesday? Yeah. So I mean, it definitely affects almost everything, and it's a sacrifice that you have to either decide you're gonna make or you're not gonna make. And then once you decide to do it, you kind of do something 100%, you know, and you don't stop until you get somewhere with it. But yeah, it affects everything. It affects school. I mean, I was taking, I think, 15, 16 units when I was here, and being the editor, and I'd be up to like 4 or 5 in the morning doing homework, you know, just to wake up at like 9 and come back to school. So I mean, it definitely affects everything.
There's the whole, you know, production aspect, and that happens on Tuesdays when there's not a Talon Marks class scheduled. So you're in there on like your own time, and you have to be there until the paper is completed, which some nights is 11:30, but lately it's been like 7, so that's good. But it's tough because you need to take your classes, and we're here so we can move on, and we're here to, you know, to graduate and to learn other things. You know, you may be interested in journalism, but you have to take those math and history and science classes. So we have a student who has a class on Tuesdays, like smack, like right in the middle of the day, like it's from like 1 to 3 or something like that. And so it's tough on productions because he has to go to class, and luckily he has yet to miss, so that's really good. But his papers or his pages that he has to work on are just like sitting there. That's when you have to come in like as a team and help out. Just because you're not a sports editor or just because you're not the news editor doesn't mean that you can't learn how to help them design. It doesn't mean that you can work on copy editing their stories. And it sucks sometimes because we take classes on Tuesdays where we have production, and then other people are like, oh, why are you taking those classes? And it's tough because when else are you gonna take them? We know how scarce the classes are here. Sometimes an English class is only offered on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. and you need that English class to graduate, so you have to make the decision, you know, even though there's production that night, like, can you still get it done? And lately, you know, people actually have been pretty good at their classes. In my time, I dropped a lot. I never failed. I didn't stay there long enough to fail. I realized I'm not going, I'm just gonna drop it. And that sucks because now I can't take English here because I failed it once for being on the paper and I dropped it once. So that's my fault, and I have to deal with that, and I have to go to a different college. But you deal with it, and you sometimes feel guilty. Like one day, the only other class I have besides the paper is this history class, and one day I decided to miss it because I stayed up late like the night before covering something, and I just didn't want to go. Luckily for me, the same day it got canceled. So that happens very rarely, but you shouldn't drop it. When Alicia finds out you missed a class, you just have to hide in your office the whole day because she'll shoot you looks. You should have went to class, and you kind of feel guilty. But then at the same time, your editors will be like, you should have covered that story. And it's like, but I had class, and like, you know, you have to find that balance. Or I have work, or, you know, if you have to take care, like, you know, my brother doesn't drive or anything like that, so I have to go help him out sometimes. I have to drive. You know, you have all these other aspects. Like, we've had people who have kids on staff, and that's a huge responsibility. So you have to also be understanding. Like, yeah, it's work, and we want to get this paper done, but at the end of the day, like, do you really want, like, this person's, like, kid not to get, like, their medicine or something like that? You know, something that important. But that story's so easy. And you have people that are like that. You have, like, I've had editors, and I've had people that I'm with that just seem not to, you know, care about your life outside of this. And that's going to come back to hurt them, because then when they really have something going on, you're like, oh, well, you didn't care about mine. And it's a tough balance. Some people do a lot better than others. I've had people on staff that have like 18 units and they don't ever seem to stress out. And I'm just like, how do you do that? I have one class and I stress out. So it's just, you have to learn how to stress.
There's a scene in the movie, and the editor-in-chief is in his office, and he's probably super busy. And I think it's like the news editor or the managing editor comes in, and she's like, he's not working on his story. What am I gonna do? It's horrible. It needs this, it needs that. And he's like, you can see, he's like, I'm so busy right now. Like, just get it done. I don't even care. And when I was editor, I know I did that a lot. I was like, I'm so busy. Just, you know, help me out and get it done. You know what I mean? And at a certain point, everyone kind of undertakes more than they can kind of chew. And at a certain point, as an editor, I mean, I can tell you from my experience, it was like, I don't care how it gets done, just go get it done. Like, I mean, I'm working extra hard. Why don't you work extra hard too? You know, and it's not the best relationship advice I can give somebody to have that kind of feelings, but sometimes it's just how things kind of work out.